93.
Graduate school. Med school.
You ever went to med school?
You study emergency medicine. You do med school. Like actual to practice medicine.
He just limited himself.
Yeah. A farm boy in a town of 1,000 people.
Can I read more than one or just one?
Start with one, just because I think there tends to be a lot of repeat stuff, so we'll give other people chances.
I said that it has to stay interesting throughout, so there has to be a lot of plot twists and multiple climaxes. Not
Okay,
just
so
like an entire 10 pages about a tree.
so plot twist, like you don't want it to be predictable.
Yeah.
Have some changes, twists and turns, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, but still be like understandable.
Okay. Unpredictable, but you can still follow what's going on.
Yeah.
All right.
Just one, right?
Yeah.
I said, I guess it would be the plot would have to be super good. Because if you aren't attracted to the plot, I guess that's plot twist. We'll go with readability.
What do you mean, like the conflict? Like
Yeah,
like
I'd say-
relatable, or
Hmm?
like when you said super good? Does that mean it needs to be relatable? So for something that you would.
The plot has to be something you're interested in.
Okay.
Because obviously if you're not interested in the plot, it's not going to be a book. It has to have, it has to be a good reason for reading, which is like, why is the story the way, why is the story the way that it is? And like, why does it drive the character forward?
Okay. I'll just kind of put characters with that as well, because those things end up going together. What else?
A constant struggle of power. It's true.
So you want McMurphy and Nurse
Yeah.
duking it out?
Yeah. I will say that did really like keep the book.
What were the other books that you said you liked?
Uh,
I don't know the ones that
One
we
Floor of the Cuckoo's Nest.
right.
Huckleberry Finn. There's not really much of a literal
Racism.
Yeah.
Trying to float down the river. Is that Huck Finn?
Mhm.
Good trying.
Is that
You kind of touched on it earlier, but realistic or relatable issues.
Okay.
Did One Floor also float down the river?
Like in Huck Finn? Or
No, just in his book. I never read it.
There's a lot of rivers in Huck Finn's book.
not as. It's probably been like 7th grade since I read it. I
I read it
don't remember so much. More cave,
Yeah.
realistic, relatable.
You got stuck in a cave with this girl.
I don't know. That doesn't mean it has to necessarily be like within the last 10 years, but still just some kind of human conflict that would make sense for people. Okay. Anything within the back row before the inner you takes over?
Writing that expresses emotion.
Okay.
That was a joke.
No, I think that just as a writer, if you can't get your audience to feel the emotion,
Mhm.
I agree.
So, like it has to stir some kind of emotional response. Okay. Ben?
I said uniqueness, which is how different it is from other books.
Is that like a fine line though?
Which would one?
Well, I mean, like, uniqueness. So, hey, this is different. That makes it pretty interesting.
Well, it has to be. I can't just read the same story over and over.
Okay.
It has to have some element of being individual.
Yeah, like when everything's a dystopian society.
Exactly. That weird phase in 2014 when everything.
Yeah, everything was like the Hunger Games.
Young adult.
So uniqueness doesn't mean it has to be like strange, unusual.
It means it has to have its own flavor to it, sort of.
What was the one that diversity or
Divergent.
Divergent?
Yeah, it copied the Hunger Games.
It did copy the Hunger Games. It had different things.
It was dystopian society.
It was.
I said also readability, which I said before.
Just being able to read it.
Oh, also-
Anna, what else did you have?
It's like different from
There can't be
words.
too much symbolism and metaphors, otherwise it's just going to confuse the audience.
Thrown in
like-
with readability, couldn't it? Like,
I mean, yeah, that could be thrown in with readability.
Although it might be more words
Even everything's
Yeah.
What,
backwards.
What
It's a
gives
scholarship.
what gives it readability?
How easy it is to like whoever wrote Heart of Darkness that has difficult readability because it's so dense. The word choice is difficult.
It's just the
weird,
language.
the syntax, and I don't know. Kurt Vonnegut, I could read 40 pages in 20 minutes. It's just how easy, how easy on the eyes it is.
So language.
Language, syntax, control.
Diction.
Yeah, I would say like the way that you make your characters speak. Like if an entire
So the
person is
dialogue.
supposed to speak.
Yeah.
Like when we read what was that one?
The one book
we read at St. Teresa's about
Oh.
To Kill a Mockingbird. That was kind of hard to understand because it was from like
You were
the
also
little
an eighth
girl
grade.
was talking. Yeah, but I mean like it's still like a hard dialect to like get used to. You know.
How was it reading Huck Finn?
It was really easy.
Dialect.
It was easy to pick up.
Yeah.
That was pretty easy.
I want to touch on characters again. It has to be like the characters have to be interesting, and I said especially the antagonist because if you don't have a good antagonist, there's no point.
I think if you're able to relate to the antagonist.
Yeah, like Thanos.
So
Yeah.
if you don't have a good antagonist, that whole conflict
Doesn't really work.
issue
They
is
have,
gonna
they have
take
to have like a good motivation too, motivational for things. Because like if their whole reason that they're a bad guy is because the guy,
I'm not really
like
sure.
it would.
I think it could be something really simple, but as long as it's an interesting.
Yeah, if it's written well, like the Joker,
Yeah.
the whole point of the Joker, like the famous line is like some men just want to watch over. That can't work for anybody who's not the Joker because that's the worst motivation ever. It's because
Yeah.
he's just a crazy guy who likes doing crazy things.
I think you have to not like you ever watch the show Lost, and you know like there's like this one character that you never are sure if he's the antagonist or if he's on the protagonist's side. So I think
That could go
that
either,
falls
like,
under struggle of power.
or like
or,
plot
like-
twists where it's
I
unpredictable.
don't know if I'm gonna be that.
Anna,
Yeah.
favorite book.
My favorite book?
Yep. Doesn't mean in here.
Okay. Probably The Hunger Games actually. Or I read To Kill a Mockingbird is one of my favorites too.
It's Tequila Mockingbird.
Tequila.
Hunger Games.
Yeah.
Emily.
The second one.
Favorite book?
Catching Fire.
Everyone from this class.
Ben.
Harry Potter and
Sorcerer's Stone.
Prisoner of Azkaban.
What's the fire one? Yeah. I didn't expect this from me.
It's very unpredictable.
Let's go.
You've read
Can I do 1984
Capitalism.
Ooh,
slash
actually,
Birdman?
1984 is
Yeah.
mine as well. So just lump those together. Harry
Yeah.
Potter 1940. Same lump.
They're both dystopian.
Also, another character.
Bethany, favorite.
Hints of communism.
Farewell Dog.
First rappers to his social.
Yeah, no duh. Steinbeck is a socialist, so it's
Alright.
Why?
Social.
Okay.
I was also Harry Potter.
Harry Potter.
Got a lot of HP fans here. Got a bunch of mudbloods.
You watch it.
Ben.
I'll go with Harry Potter.
Harry Potter.
I never read
What kind of cookies?
That was
Cop out.
I'm still. I always fall under the pie thing where it's what's your favorite piece of pie? The one you have in your hand right now.
Yeah, the last one you ate, last one you read, or
Or,
you know
yeah,
something.
yeah.
Yeah, no, understood. Would you put Slaughterhouse 5 in the category
Yeah.
of a good book?
I think it's. I think I can respect the book, but I can't like it.
I like the
Well, I can like it, but like it's so. I like it in a way that like I can't enjoy it as my own. Like Harry Potter, I can relate to my childhood and places of my home, but like
the fact that
Slaughterhouse 5 is an anti-war book, and the character and the author seems more involved with the novel than other authors of books I like.
Which one of these? And I mean, you, and it's fine. I'm not again trying to make you. You must defend Slaughterhouse 5 as being a good book.
Yeah.
You know, or get Grandma to come over to the dark side. What things on here on the list that we have, and you could also look at what you've written down and add other elements to it. which one of these does it do?
Readability.
Interesting conflict characters.
What is the conflict?
For which book?
No, for like Slaughterhouse-5. Like, so we're saying Slaughterhouse-5 is a good book.
It's
Here are the
not-
characteristics. So Anna's saying that it's a readable book, right? So when you say interesting conflict characters, and I'm not trying to trap you with it, but like, what would you look at as being the conflict for Slaughterhouse-5?
His own. Actually, you know, it's not so much the fact that it's an interesting conflict; it's the fact that it's so unique because there is no conflict.
So this one, like this uniqueness thing.
Yeah, it's void. It's void of any actual real conflict. I guess with war, maybe his own brain would be
I was gonna say it's more
like a
internal.
conflict.
I mean, the only when Derby has his response to Campbell, which is on your list, but it's not lying. We're taking a look at it here. Vonnegut even throws in a little part here. On page 164, and then it developed that Campbell, so Campbell's the one talking about, you're going to have to fight the communists, this is why you should join us, and all that kind of stuff, was not going to go unanswered after all. Poor old Derby, the doomed high school teacher, lumbered to his feet. Lumber. Mr. Derby teaches wood. Vonnegut's onto something here. Lumbered to his feet for what was probably the finest moment of his life. There are almost no characters in this story, and almost no dramatic confrontations, because most of the people in it are so sick and so much the listless playthings of enormous forces. One of the main effects of the war, after all, is that people are discouraged from being characters. But old Derby was a character now, so like it's hardly anything that happens. But here is going to be a little bit of a moment when poor old Derby's going to talk. I think they're going to get shot for stealing a teapot, later on.
I think that Vonnegut didn't read this book so other people could enjoy reading this. He wrote it so he could get something off his chest. You could tell when Ellison wrote something that he wanted people to read. He wanted people to understand his point of view. Vonnegut wasn't writing this with the intention of saying, I want to make people enjoy this and read it. Sure, it'd be a benefit if people did, but he was just trying to get some demons out of his own head. He wasn't doing this for our sake. He was doing it for his own sake.
And this is different from what Kira, you said, the emotional response one. Yeah, it's more of an emotional catharsis for him. Yeah, event that can take place. No, yeah, I would absolutely agree with it. And the part when Billy is in the hospital room, Rumford's right there, does not think that does not put any credence into anything that Billy says. And Billy finally goes, I was there. I just want you to know that I was there. We don't have to talk about it essentially, but yeah, I was there. I kind of feel like that's what Vonnegut's in a way sort of going through with it, that I just need I needed to make clear that this happened, that it's something that has been plaguing me at the time that he writes it, the last 22 years. I need to get this off my chest somehow, some way. If Sam's grandma doesn't like the book, that's okay. If Ben doesn't like the book, that's okay. If Sam doesn't like the book, if he respects it, that's perfectly fine. But at least I'm kind of going through that emotional response. And I think that allusion that he makes to Locke's wife at the beginning of the first part, certainly kind of emphasizes that I need this to kind of look back and get past this part before I can move on to other aspects of my life.
I feel like you could almost put that as another characteristic. Like it wasn't written for the audience; it was more written for the author. So it gives it like a plot twist because it's not making it giving people what they want.
And no offense to any of these writers, and I've read the books and like something, but a John Grisham,
Dan Brown.
James Patterson, yeah, you can throw in Dan Brown, Nicholas Sparks, where certainly yes, you get here ahead like a little. You write because you love to write, I would hope. But I think there's a certain point when you write because
Makes
it's
money.
income, it makes money. I think recording artists, you could argue like the first one or two albums that they put out or songs is probably the most unique ones. It's the ones that you would tie to them, and then after that, you could argue the sounds kind of all start to plug together. But hey, I need to release something. So there's that need, there's that desire to write for yourself, whatever that motivation would be. And I think with Vonnegut, he's not really popular yet when he writes it, so there's not that need that it has to fit a certain kind of shtick. If someone were to read this book and read Cat Cat's Cradle and Breakfast with Champions. Maybe they could be disappointed when they read something written in the 1980s that doesn't sound the way that Vonnegut is supposed to sound. But no, I think that's almost what is the need, what is the desire, what is the purpose that you're looking for with writing, and certainly conflict would tie in with that, but not even just kind of going, it must be anti-war, but there's that personal kind of attachment that would go on with it. And so in that regards, it's for him at the very least, it's going to end up kind of being a good book.
I would say, this isn't really pointing on anything new, but I would say another reason for his uniqueness, and we kind of touched upon it, is just the fact that nothing happens. Like, there's no beginning, there's no end. You could argue there's not even really a plot involved in any of this. It just kind of happens and then just doesn't happen.
I mean, you're supposed to have, remember filling out that chart over the years.
There's no hero's journey in this. It's literally
Maybe
it's sort of, he tells a story about a guy.
Some would argue that, hey, there was a plot and then it just completely went off the cliff.
Yeah. Because I feel like the only actual real sense or like taste of a narrative involved is with the introduction of the first chapter where he's like, I'm writing this book. Me and my old friend are writing this book, and we went back to Dresden to talk about it, and then that's it. Nothing else happens. The actual book isn't even really a book. It's just his own.
Without looking,
yeah.
Does anybody remember how chapter 2 starts?
Listen.
Yeah, listen. So here's the story of Billy.
Billy Pilgrim has become unstuck in time. Anyone recall how chapter 6 starts?
Listen. Billy Pilgrim is something. I just remember saying this is weird.
Yeah, it's where you have it mimics on 136 when people let me go. Listen, and then it just stops. Billy Pilgrim says he went to Dresden, Germany on the day after his morphine night in the British compound in the center of the extermination camp for Russian prisoners of war. Billy woke up at dawn on that day in January. There were no windows in the little hospital, and the ghostly candles had gone out. So the only light came from pinprick holes in the walls and a sketchy rectangle that outlined the imperfectly fitted door. Little Paul Lazaro with a broken arm snored on one bed. Edgar Derby, the high school teacher who would eventually be shot, snored on the other. Any ideas why? Listen.
Maybe that's when he came out.
That's the way. What do you mean?
Maybe that is when he became first unstuck in time. Because you have to pick a point for him to become unstuck, right? Doesn't he give us a point whenever he's like?
Well, he says he first came unstuck in time before the Tralfamadorians during World War II. It's not that moment quite yet when it happens. It's when he's him and Roland before they end up becoming prisoners of war. When it's like the Three Musketeers, yeah, shortly. That's kind of leading up into that.
Do you think it could be like a rebirth type thing?
Well, we got to go easy on the metaphors.
All right.
Yeah. Anna won't like that. And she's not alone.
Too metaphorical. I don't have a problem with the metaphors when it gets too metaphorical.
Yeah, when everything.
When the whole book is a metaphor.
Yeah. When every other sentence has a metaphor in it, I'm literally just chill.
That's another thing.
Okay.
Ellison's. Didn't we talk about how Ellison said that he actually thought about, it felt like every single line, or you said that it felt like every single line that he had written, he had put thought into?
Yeah, because there's two lines that most of it.
Yes.
What's the one advanced plot? It feels different from Vonnegut, because Vonnegut's are all simple sentences. It's like Billy has become unstuck in time, for example. It just happens. There's no intensity with it.
No. I'm sure. Well, in chapter 1, he. When it's kind of personal reflections, does mention that I've gone through pages and pages and pages of this. So I'm sure he's gone through
versions,
drafts, manuscripts, and I'm sure some have Billy Pilgrim. I would assume that others it was a totally different kind of take on it, and this is the one that he finally ends up going with. It certainly doesn't feel that the way that Ellison would do a careful revision of line by line. And you get the sense with Ellison that if that one sentence in chapter 12 isn't just right, the whole book's going to fall apart in his viewpoint, whether or not readership agrees. How much time Vonnegut goes over this, I don't know, but I would agree it kind of has the feel of, okay, it is what it is.
Yeah, maybe.
Now here we go. Steinbeck is one who, and maybe he's exaggerating a little bit, but he's one who would always kind of write, I wrote The Grapes of Wrath in 6 weeks. which is an incredibly short amount of time
For
for
600
for a
Did
novel,
actually?
let alone something that's 621 pages.
Yeah,
I
like
think.
Hamlet's a class.
That's what he claims he did. I don't think
That's-
anyone knows for sure, but he's like, I sat down, I wrote it, and that's the way that it is.
It's like
Hemingway and Steinbeck have similar styles so far as like syntactical structure. Neither have really long, complex sentences and things like that. Hemingway would go over word by like these words have to be right. So who knows? I think in some ways kind of what to believe, with it. But no, I understand what you mean. That it feels like this one does not have
maybe
the
that's what
same
makes
kind
it
of
such a good
careful
artist.
plot that we go over. I'm going to keep reading this part. This is the beginning of chapter 6. Billy sat up in bed. He had no idea what year it was or what planet he was on, so it kind of sounds like we're coming unstuck in time here. Whatever the planet's name was, it was cold. But it wasn't the cold that had awakened Billy. It was the animal magnetism which was making him shiver and itch. It gave him profound aches in his musculature as though he had been exercising hard. The animal magnetism was coming from behind him. If Billy had to guess as to the source, he would have said that there was a vampire bat hanging upside down on the wall behind him. Billy moved toward the foot of his cot before turning to look at whatever it was. He didn't want the animal to drop into his face and maybe claw his eyes out or bite off his big nose. Then he turned. The source of the magnetism really did resemble a bat. It was Billy's impresario's coat with the fur collar. It was hanging from a nail. Billy now looked back toward it again, looking at it over his shoulder, feeling the magnetism increase. Then he faced it, kneeling on his cot, dared to touch it here and there. He was seeking the exact source of the radiations. He found only two small sources, two lumps an inch apart and hidden in the lining. One was shaped like a pea, the other was shaped like a tiny horseshoe. Billy received a message carried by the radiations. He was told not to find out what the lumps were. He was advised to be content with knowing that they could work miracles for him, provided he did not insist on learning their nature. That was all right with Billy Pilgrim. He was grateful. He was alive.
So I totally forget what both of those things were.
One was
What was it?
Denture or
Half the
tooth
indenture.
ring, like a crown or
A pearl. Wasn't it?
So what's up with that? I remember that. What was it like? Was something speaking?
Here's the part that kind of, well,
It's like the
when it talks about like the magnetism, I kind of take that as, you get the feeling that you're being watched, or
Yeah.
something's behind you. Like there's something that just kind of pulls you in that you go, okay, what's going on? And so he's kind of feeling that with the coat. The part here that kind of jumps out to me, and I'd say it jumped out to me more so this last reading than any other times. He was told not to find out what the lumps were. He was advised to be content with knowing that they would work miracles for him, provided he did not insist on learning their nature, and that was okay with them. Don't worry about it. It'll be okay. Okay.
It doesn't seem like you worried about
Do you think that's us seeing into like his fourth dimensional side?
Well, I think it's certainly, if anything, it encapsulates that this is kind of the point of view of Billy, that all things happen the way that they're going to happen, so don't
Yeah.
end up worrying about it. But, I mentioned to you, how does chapter 2 start? And we knew about this, becomes unstuck in time. Right before that listen, though, on page 21-22, was when we had the whole pillar of salt. And, Ben kind of talking about Vonnegut writes this to get his own emotions kind of off his chest, where he ends up kind of having to look back. You have to be able to kind of figure things out. Talks about being human. That's what he loves about Lot's wife and all that kind of stuff. It's the human element to look back to try to figure things out. And for here, it's pretty much Billy's getting this, sort of message or idea. Don't worry about it. You'll be fine. Okay. I'm not going to look into it more. I'm not going to try to seek things out anymore. And I think that's where Billy's kind of becoming, again, more unhuman. And that would be the disconnect that we have there with, I'm going to write Vonnegut again, with Vonnegut, where he is certainly meant to be different from him. That, this idea of Billy's viewpoint is going to be so different that it's not going to match up with the way that we should kind of go about things. I almost kind of see it as an emphasis of, hey, Billy, again, this is not the way that you necessarily want to go through life. The death of Billy.
He's shot in the head with a laser gun in the 70s.
Was it a laser gun? Did you double check that?
It's a laser gun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was in the 70s because Lazaro said
You remember the date?
something.
May 20. first.
Oh, wait, I have a question.
Yep.
So, if he's not actually time traveling, how did he know that the plane was gonna crash?
He didn't.
Yes, he did.
Then why would you say he wasn't actually?
He wasn't traveling. He wasn't actually
Because he's not. No, the whole point is that he's like
Oh, that's
mentally unstable. He's not actually able to time travel, but he knew that the plane was gonna crash, and he knew that his wife was gonna die, and then both things
He
happened.
says that he did when he wrote the book. He probably didn't at the time.
If it depends on your viewpoint as to if you believe he really knows these things.
Okay.
If Billy is someone who has gone mad from the war, and again, Billy and Vonnegut being two different things, but the narrator saying that Billy does know these things, or at least Billy believes these things. If he truly does time travel, then yes, he would know when all these events are going to happen. Just like he knows that he's going to be shot by a laser gun by a guy sent by Paul Lazaro on February 13th, 1976 in Chicago, when the United States has been balkanized and, into 20 separate states. So the more, I think as a reader, we always want to try to find, okay, what's the reason, what's the truth behind it? I think a lot of folks, as you take a look, especially towards the end of the book, in the end of chapter 9, when Billy's going into like the adult bookstore and he's looking at more Kilgore Trout things, and he's coming across, Zircon 212, where you have a person who's trapped on another planet, kind of like on display, and comes across a Montana Wild Hack film. That all of these things kind of go together into his mind that, hey, this could be really me. He wouldn't truly, honestly know any of those things. If, like, with the plane crash, and if you were to get on a plane and you know that the plane is going to crash,
Why would you get on?
why would you get on? Why would you go, Captain? Watch out in the next 3 minutes. Now, at some point, armed guards are going to remove you from the plane. Then
He
maybe.
said that he didn't want to cause any disruptions, right?
Yeah, which
If
would be a
you
bigger
could,
disruption.
and this is a horrific rhetorical question, but like, if you could save someone's life simply by saying, "Hey, get off the plane," would you?
Because the moment was always that way.
You have the responsibility, and I think that kind of becomes the cop out. Where why didn't you stop the flight? That was about it's going to happen. Why didn't you study for the physics test that you failed?
I was gonna fail it anyway.
Failed anyway. That kind of whole apathy. That's just the way it is.
So
it goes. Kind of becomes the mantra of an apathetic.
You should have that above your door.
You know when we kind of talk about how paths, how it happens in ways but you don't control how it happens. How you have something, there are givens in your life, but you have your own path. Like in this one show I used to watch, it kind of talked about the fourth dimension too, and I kind of read it this weekend. And basically their explanation was that it's gonna happen regardless, and if you try and prevent it one way, it'll just happen.